The pen felt like lead in my hand as my mother-in-law pressed the papers against my hospital bed tray. My vision swam, the fluorescent lights above fragmenting into halos of pain. "Sign it, Melissa," Richard said from the corner of the room. My husband, the man who'd promised to love me in sickness and in health, he wouldn't even look at me. Dr. Chen did her best. These things happen. These things happen. My abdomen was on fire, the infection spreading through my body like wildfire. I could feel it, the wrongness, the poison, the death creeping through my veins. 3 days ago, I'd gone in for a routine appendectomy. Now I was dying. "The waiver protects everyone," my mother-in-law Patricia said, her voice dripping with false sympathy. "Dr. Chen is a family friend. She's devastated about the complication. But lawsuits would destroy her career, and frankly, dear, they'd destroy this family's reputation, too." I tried to speak, but my throat was too dry. They'd removed my water cup an hour ago, said I needed to fast for another procedure, but no one had come. No one was coming. "Sign it and we'll make sure you get the best care," Patricia continued. "We'll transfer you to a better facility. But first, we need to know you're not going to be difficult." Difficult. I was 28 years old and dying because a surgeon had left a surgical sponge inside me during what should have been a simple procedure. The sepsis was killing me, and they wanted me to sign away my right to hold anyone accountable. My hand shook as I held the pen. Through my delirium, I could see Richard finally look at me. There was something in his eyes. Not love, not concern. Calculation. Cold, empty calculation. That's when I knew. They were waiting for me to die. The insurance payout from my life insurance policy, the one Richard had convinced me to increase last year, would be $2 million. Dr. Chen was Patricia's college roommate and godmother to Richard's sister. The malpractice would ruin her, cost the Thornton family their connection to one of the city's top surgeons, and trigger an investigation that might reveal other secrets. But if I signed this waiver before I died, it would all go away. Clean, simple, profitable. I whispered. "Good girl," Patricia said, guiding my hand toward the paper. I signed. What else could I do? I was too weak to fight, too far gone to matter. As the ink dried, I saw Patricia and Richard exchange a glance. Relief. Victory. I died 6 hours later, alone in that hospital room. The nurse found me during her midnight rounds. I woke up screaming. My hands flew to my abdomen, feeling for the bandages, the wound, the infection eating me alive. But there was nothing, just smooth skin under my cotton nightgown. My nightgown, the one I'd thrown away 2 years ago because Richard said it made me look frumpy. I sat bolt upright in bed, my heart hammering. The room was wrong. This wasn't the hospital. This was our old apartment, the one we'd lived in before Richard's promotion, before we'd moved into the Thornton family estate. My phone sat on the nightstand. I grabbed it with shaking hands. March 15th, 2021. No, that was impossible. I died on March 21st, 2023. I died signing that waiver, watching my husband count down the hours until my life insurance paid out. I died. But I was here. 2 years earlier, a week before my appendix would rupture and send me to the hospital where Dr. Vanessa Chen would butcher me on the operating table. A sob broke from my throat, then another. I pressed my hands over my mouth, trying to stay quiet. But the memories crashed over me like waves. The pain, the betrayal, the moment I realized my husband was waiting for me to die. The pen in my hand, Patricia's false sympathy. The way they'd all left me alone in that room to die like a dog. "Melissa?" Richard's voice came from the bathroom, groggy with sleep. "What's wrong?" I stared at the bathroom door, watching the light spill out as he emerged. He looked younger. His hairline hadn't started receding yet. He hadn't developed the hardness around his eyes that came from 2 more years of being molded by his mother's ambitions. He looked at me with something almost like concern, but I knew better now. "Bad dream," I managed to say. He frowned, crossing to the bed. When he reached out to touch my shoulder, I flinched. I couldn't help it. His frown deepened. It must have been really bad. Yeah, I forced myself to breathe slowly. I'm okay. Go back to sleep. He studied me for a moment longer, then shrugged and returned to the bathroom. I heard the tap running, the sound of him brushing his teeth even though it was 3 a.m. Richard was always particular about his routine. I sat in the dark, my mind racing. This was real. Somehow, impossibly, I'd been given a second chance. I was back before it all went wrong. No, I was back before I knew it was wrong. It had always been wrong. Richard had never loved me. His mother had handpicked me because I was malleable, well-educated enough to not embarrass them, but not connected enough to have any real power. I was supposed to be a good wife, produce an heir, and fade into the background of Thornton family photos. I'd played that role perfectly in my first life. I'd been so grateful that someone like Richard, handsome, successful, from a good family, had chosen someone like me. A scholarship kid from nowhere with no family money, no connections. I'd bent myself into knots trying to be worthy of him, and it had killed me. My phone buzzed. A calendar reminder. Lunch with Patricia, 12:30 p.m., the garden room. I remembered this lunch. Patricia had invited me to discuss family matters. She'd spent 2 hours subtly criticizing everything about me while smiling sweetly. My choice of career, pediatric nurse, noble but not prestigious enough. My wardrobe, too practical. My reluctance to attend every Thornton family function, selfish. By the end of it, I'd felt 2 inches tall. I'd cried in the car afterward, then apologized to Richard for being too sensitive. Not this time. I opened my phone's notes app and started typing. Everything I could remember. Dr. Vanessa Chen's name. The date my appendix would rupture, March 22nd, 6 days from now. The name of the hospital, Mercy General, the surgical team. The complication that was actually gross negligence. A retained surgical sponge that would cause a massive infection. The waiver they'd make me sign. The date of my death, March 21st, 2023, which meant March 21st this year in this timeline. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely type, but I forced myself to keep going. Every detail mattered. Then I started on everything else. Richard's affair with his colleague, Amanda Pierce, which I'd discovered 2 months before my death when I'd seen the messages on his phone. His mother's control over our finances. I'd never even had access to our joint account passwords. The life insurance policy he'd convinced me to sign, increasing the payout from $500,000 to $2 million because we needed to be responsible. I'd been so stupid, so trusting, so desperate to believe I'd finally found a family that wanted me. The bathroom door opened again. Richard emerged, now in his pajamas, and slid back into bed. He didn't try to comfort me or ask if I was okay. He just rolled over, his back to me, and within minutes I heard his breathing slow into sleep. I stared at his back, this man I'd loved with everything I had, and felt nothing but cold, clear hatred. He wanted me dead. Maybe not yet, not in this timeline, but in the original timeline, he'd stood in that hospital room and calculated whether my death was worth more than my life, and he'd decided it was. I wouldn't give him the chance again. I canceled lunch with Patricia. The text message was simple. Not feeling well, rain check. Her response came 30 seconds later. Of course, dear. Feel better? We'll reschedule soon. Translation, how dare you cancel on me? And yes, we will reschedule because you don't get to say no to me. I didn't care. I had 6 days before my appendix would rupture and I needed to prepare. First, I needed a new doctor. Someone who wasn't connected to the Thornton family. Someone good. I called in sick to work, something I never did, and spent the morning researching. Dr. Michael Torres, top-rated general surgeon at St. Catherine's Hospital across town. No connection to Mercy General, no connection to Dr. Vanessa Chen. Perfect. I made an appointment for that afternoon, claiming I was having intermittent abdominal pain. The receptionist tried to schedule me for next week, but I played up the symptoms until she agreed to fit me in. St. Catherine's was a 40-minute drive from our apartment. I'd never been there before. In my first life, when my appendix ruptured, Richard had insisted on taking me to Mercy General because his mother was on the board and we'd get the best care, from her college roommate who'd probably been drinking before my surgery. Dr. Torres was in his 50s, with kind eyes and a firm handshake. He listened as I described my symptoms. Symptoms I didn't actually have yet, but would in 6 days. The pain is intermittent, I said, following the script I'd prepared. Lower right abdomen. Sometimes it gets really intense, then it fades. I'm worried about my appendix. He palpated my abdomen gently. No acute tenderness right now. It could be appendicitis in the early stages, or it could be something else entirely. I'd like to run some tests. What if it is appendicitis? I asked. What would happen? If it's acute, we'd likely recommend surgery. Appendectomies are very routine procedures. Low risk, high success rate, usually just a night or two in the hospital. What could go wrong? He gave me a reassuring smile. Complications are rare. Infection at the incision site, occasionally. In very rare cases, if the appendix ruptures before surgery, there's a risk of peritonitis. But that's why we monitor symptoms and operate before it gets to that point. What about during surgery? I pressed. What could go wrong during the actual operation? His expression shifted slightly. It was a strange question for a patient to ask, and we both knew it. Any surgery carries risks, he said carefully. Reaction to anesthesia, bleeding, infection. In an appendectomy specifically, there's always a risk of injury to surrounding organs, though that's extremely rare with an experienced surgeon. The most common surgical complication would be an infection if the appendix had already ruptured and contaminated the peritoneal cavity. What about retained surgical items? His eyes sharpened. Retained surgical items are a never event, meaning they should never happen. We have multiple counting protocols, x-rays if needed. It's one of the most preventable surgical errors. But it does happen. Yes, he admitted. It does, very rarely. And when it does, it's considered gross negligence. I nodded slowly. If I need surgery, I want you to do it. Here, not at Mercy General. Do you have a reason to avoid Mercy General? I met his eyes. Let's just say I have a bad feeling about it. He studied me for a long moment, then nodded. I understand. If you develop acute symptoms, call my service immediately. We'll get you in here. We scheduled a follow-up for 2 days from now. I left with Dr. Torres's direct number programmed into my phone and a referral for an ultrasound. As I drove home, my phone rang. Richard. Where are you? He asked. No greeting. I had a doctor's appointment. I told you I wasn't feeling well. You told my mother you weren't feeling well. You didn't tell me anything. Because you were already gone when I woke up, I thought. But I knew better than to say it. I'm having some abdominal pain, I said. I wanted to get it checked out. Why didn't you go to Dr. Peters? Dr. Peters was the Thornton family physician. Of course. He couldn't see me for 2 weeks. I found someone who could see me today. A pause. Who? Dr. Michael Torres at St. Catherine's. St. Catherine's? That's across town. Why would you go there when Mercy General is 10 minutes away? Because Dr. Torres came highly recommended. Another pause. Longer this time. My mother won't like this. Your mother isn't my doctor, I said, and was surprised by how steady my voice was. Melissa. His tone held a warning. We've talked about this. Family decisions need to be made together. You can't just... It's my body, Richard. My health. I get to choose my own doctor. Silence. I could almost hear him recalculating, trying to figure out why his usually compliant wife was suddenly pushing back. Fine, he said finally. We'll discuss this tonight. He hung up without saying goodbye. I gripped the steering wheel, my heart pounding. In my first life, I would have been in tears by now, apologizing, promising to cancel with Dr. Torres and see Dr. Peters instead. I would have bent. Not anymore. Richard came home late that night with his mother in tow. I'd been expecting it. They found me in the kitchen, making dinner. Something simple. Pasta with marinara sauce. In my first life, I'd spent hours preparing elaborate meals to impress Patricia, desperate for her approval. tonight, I couldn't have cared less. Melissa, Patricia said, sweeping into the kitchen like she owned it. She probably thought she did. Richard told me you're having health concerns. I wish you'd called me. I could have arranged for you to see Dr. Chen immediately. Dr. Vanessa Chen, the woman who would kill me in 6 days. I found a doctor I'm comfortable with, I said, not looking up from the pot I was stirring. St. Catherine's is so far away, dear, and we don't know anyone there. If something were to happen, then I'm sure Dr. Torres would handle it. He's one of the top surgeons in the city. Patricia's smile tightened. Vanessa Chen is one of the top surgeons in the state. She's been practicing for 20 years. She's brilliant. I'm sure she is. I finally looked up, meeting Patricia's eyes. But I've chosen Dr. Torres. The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. Richard shifted uncomfortably, looking between his mother and me like he couldn't believe what he was hearing. Melissa, Patricia said, her voice now stripped of its false warmth. I don't think you understand how things work in this family. We have relationships with certain institutions, certain doctors. These relationships matter. They're part of our social fabric, our network. When you married Richard, you became part of that network. You don't just get to opt out because you're having a little abdominal discomfort. It's not about opting out, I said calmly. It's about choosing my own healthcare provider. It's about being part of this family. Patricia's voice rose. It's about understanding that your choices reflect on all of us. What will people think when they hear that Richard Thornton's wife refused to see Dr. Chen? That she went across town to some random surgeon? It looks like you don't trust our judgment. It looks like you're ungrateful. There it was. The accusation that had controlled me for 3 years of marriage. Ungrateful. I was supposed to be so grateful to have been chosen by the Thorntons that I'd accept anything they decided for me. I'm very grateful for everything the family has done for me, I said, my voice still calm. But my medical care is my decision. Patricia's face flushed red. She turned to Richard. Are you going to let her talk to me this way? Richard looked like he wanted to disappear into the floor. Mom, maybe we should... No, Patricia cut him off. This is exactly what I warned you about, Richard. She seems sweet at first, but I told you girls from her background always have an angle. They pretend to be grateful, but the moment they think they have security, they start making demands. My background. She meant poor. She meant having been raised by a single mother who'd worked 2 jobs. She meant not having a trust fund or a family name. In my first life, this comment had made me cry for hours. I'd tried so hard to prove I wasn't what Patricia thought I was. Now, I felt nothing but contempt. If wanting to choose my own doctor means I have an angle, I said, then I guess I have an angle. Patricia stared at me like I'd slapped her. Richard, control your wife. Melissa, please, Richard said, his voice tight. Can we talk about this privately? There's nothing private about it. I'm seeing Dr. Torres. If I need surgery, he'll perform it at St. Catherine's. That's final. I turned back to the stove, dismissing them both. My hands were shaking, but I kept them steady on the spoon. Behind me, I heard Patricia's sharp intake of breath. You've made a serious mistake, she said, her voice ice cold. Richard, we're leaving. Call me when you've sorted this out. The front door slammed. Richard stood in the kitchen, staring at me like I was a stranger. What the hell was that? He finally asked. That was me making a decision about my own body. You humiliated my mother. Your mother tried to tell me which doctor I'm allowed to see. She humiliated herself. He moved closer, and I saw something flicker in his eyes. Anger, yes, but also something else. Fear, confusion. He wasn't used to me fighting back. None of them were. I don't know what's gotten into you, he said slowly. But you need to fix this. Call my mother. Apologize. Make an appointment with Dr. Chen. No. Melissa. No, Richard. I set down the spoon and faced him fully. I'm going to say this once. I am not calling your mother. I am not apologizing. I am not seeing Dr. Chen, if you can't accept that, then we have a bigger problem than my choice of doctors. He stared at me, his jaw working. I could see him trying to figure out what had changed, what had shifted. Where was the woman who'd cried and apologized every time he or his mother raised their voices? She died, I thought. She died alone in a hospital room while you counted your insurance money. We'll talk about this later, he said finally, when you're being rational. He left the kitchen. A moment later, I heard the door to his study close. I turned back to the pasta, my entire body trembling now that I was alone. But it wasn't fear making me shake. It was rage. And underneath the rage, something I hadn't felt in years. Power. The next morning, I woke up to an empty bed. Richard had already left for work without saying goodbye. Fine by me. I had an ultrasound scheduled at St. Catherine's at 10. The imaging would probably show nothing. My appendix wouldn't start causing problems for another 5 days, but I needed a paper trail. I needed documentation that I was a patient of Dr. Torres, that I'd been experiencing symptoms, that when the crisis hit, there was a clear medical history supporting my choice to go to St. Catherine's instead of Mercy General. The ultrasound was uncomfortable but quick. The technician was professional and kind, nothing like the harried staff at Mercy General who I'd barely seen between bouts of delirium. Everything looks normal, the technician said. Fine. But Dr. Torres will review the images and get back to you. Normal. Of course it was normal. The catastrophe hadn't happened yet. I stopped at a coffee shop on the way home and opened my laptop. I had research to do. First, Dr. Vanessa Chen. I found her easily. Mercy General's website featured her prominently. Top surgeon, 20 years of experience, specializing in minimally invasive procedures. Her photo showed a woman in her 50s with an impressive resume. I dug deeper. It took 2 hours of searching, but I found what I was looking for buried in medical board records. Dr. Vanessa Chen had 3 formal complaints filed against her in the past 5 years. 2 had been dismissed. 1 was still under investigation, a patient who'd developed complications after a routine gallbladder removal. The complaint alleged Chen had been impaired during surgery. Impaired. The medical board's polite way of saying drunk or high. The complaint had been filed 8 months ago. It was still pending. In my original timeline, I would die in 6 days. My death would be Chen's 4th complaint, but with Patricia Thornton's influence and my signed waiver, it would be buried, just like the others. I saved screenshots of everything. The complaints. The pending investigation. Chen's surgical record, which showed a complication rate slightly higher than average, though not high enough to raise red flags. Next, Richard and Amanda Pierce. This one was harder. In my first life, I hadn't discovered the affair until 2 months before my death. But it had been going on longer than that. How much longer? I searched Richard's firm's website and found Amanda's profile. Senior associate, corporate law, Harvard Law School, beautiful, connected. Everything I wasn't. I created a fake email account and sent a message to a private investigator I found through a carefully worded Google search. I needed someone discreet, someone who could get me proof. The PI, a woman named Sarah Chen, no relation to Vanessa, hopefully, responded within an hour. We set up a meeting for that afternoon. Sarah's office was in a strip mall between a nail salon and a tax preparation service. She was in her 40s, sharp-eyed, with the look of someone who'd seen everything twice. "You think your husband is cheating?" she said. It wasn't a question. "I know he is. I need proof." "Why? If you know, why do you need proof?" "Because I need to control when and how it comes out." She studied me for a long moment. "That's an interesting answer. Most women want proof so they can confront the husband, get an apology, maybe save the marriage. You sound like you're planning something else." "I'm planning to divorce him, but I need leverage." "Leverage?" Sarah leaned back in her chair and, "Let me guess, prenup?" "Yes, it heavily favors him unless I can prove infidelity. And even then, his mother has expensive lawyers. I need everything documented. Dates, times, locations, photos if possible. Hotel receipts. Everything." Sarah nodded slowly. "This kind of surveillance isn't cheap. We're talking at least $5,000 for a comprehensive job. I'd expected that. I pulled out my credit card, the one Richard didn't know about, the one I'd opened 6 months into our marriage when I'd realized I needed at least one thing that was mine alone. How long will it take? Depends on how active he is. If he's seeing her regularly, I can get you something within a week. But you said you want comprehensive. That means at least 2 weeks of surveillance, maybe 3. 2 weeks. My appendix would rupture in 5 days. I'd need the evidence after I survived, after I'd already started building my case. Do it, I said. 3 weeks, everything you can get. We signed a contract. Sarah gave me her secure contact information and told me to expect daily updates. As I left her office, my phone rang. Dr. Torres. Ms. Thornton, he said when I answered, your ultrasound came back normal, which is good news. But I want you to know that doesn't rule out appendicitis entirely. If your symptoms worsen, especially if you develop a fever, severe pain, or nausea, don't wait. Call me immediately. I will. Thank you, Dr. Torres. I mean it. Early-stage appendicitis can be hard to catch on imaging. Trust your body. If something feels wrong, it probably is. I promised I would call. As I hung up, I felt a strange sense of gratitude. In my first life, no one had told me to trust my body. No one had taken my pain seriously until it was too late. 3 days passed, 3 days of cold silence from Richard, passive-aggressive texts from Patricia, and careful documentation on my part. I photographed everything. The ultrasound results, my appointment card with Dr. Torres, the referral forms. I backed everything up to a secure cloud storage that Richard couldn't access. I also started documenting the money. In my first life, I'd been so naive about our finances. Richard had convinced me early on that he should handle everything: investments, savings, bills. I'd agreed because I trusted him and because, frankly, I'd never had much money to manage before. My nursing salary was decent, but nothing compared to what Richard made as a senior associate at his law firm. What I hadn't realized was that Richard had been slowly isolating me financially. Our joint account, which I barely used, had a balance of about $8,000. My paychecks were deposited there, and I used it for groceries and personal expenses. But Richard's paycheck went into a separate account I didn't have access to. So did the dividend payments from his trust fund. When I'd asked about it once, early in our marriage, he'd explained that it was for long-term savings and investments. He'd shown me statements proving the money was there, promised we'd use it for our future: a house, children, retirement. I'd believed him. Now, I systematically searched through every drawer in his study. I found statements for 3 separate accounts. The balances made my stomach turn. The joint savings he'd mentioned, $340,000. His personal investment account, $780,000. A third account I'd never heard of, $1.2 million, over $2 million. Money that was technically marital property, but that I'd had zero access to or knowledge of. I photographed every statement, every investment summary, every quarterly report. Then I found the life insurance policy. It was in a locked drawer in his desk. I'd learned to pick simple locks from a patient's father who'd been a locksmith back when I'd had time to chat with patients' families. The policy was exactly as I remembered: $2 million payout, beneficiary, Richard Thornton. But there was something else in the drawer, a folder labeled estate planning. Inside, I found documents I'd never seen before. A will, my will, that left everything to Richard. I didn't remember signing it, but there was my signature dated from 6 months ago. 6 months ago, when Richard had taken me to lunch with a colleague who does estate planning. He'd said it was just a formality, just standard stuff for young married couples. I'd signed a bunch of papers while we chatted, barely reading them. Beneath the will was another document, a post-nuptial agreement modifying our prenup. It waived my right to any claim on Richard's premarital assets and trust fund and limited my claim on marital assets to 10% in the event of divorce. I stared at the signature. It looked like mine, but I had absolutely no memory of signing it, which meant either I'd been drugged when I signed it or I looked closer. The signature was good, very good, but the pen pressure was slightly off. The loop on the M was a hair too wide, forged. Richard had forged my signature on a post-nuptial agreement that would leave me with almost nothing if we divorced. I photographed everything with shaking hands. Then I carefully returned everything to exactly how I'd found it and relocked the drawer. That night, Richard came home late and went straight to bed without speaking to me. I lay beside him in the dark, listening to him breathe, and planned 2 more days until my appendix would rupture. I needed to be ready. Day 5, March 21st. I woke up at 6 a.m. feeling fine. My appendix hadn't ruptured yet. According to my memories, it would happen in the late afternoon. I'd been at work when the pain started, had tried to push through my shift, and by the time I'd admitted I needed help, I'd been in agony. This time, I called in sick to work. My supervisor was understanding. I'd never called in sick before, after all. "Take care of yourself, Melissa," she said. "We'll manage without you." Richard had already left for work. I spent the morning preparing. I packed a bag with clothes, toiletries, my laptop, and all the documentation I'd gathered. I put it in my car, then I sat down and wrote letters. The first was to my supervisor at the hospital where I worked. I explained that I'd discovered some concerning information about my marriage and my safety, and that I might need to take emergency leave. I thanked her for her understanding and promised to keep her updated. The second was to my mother-in-law. This one was harder. "Dear Patricia, by the time you read this, I will be recovering from emergency surgery at St. Catherine's Hospital. I know you wanted me to go to Mercy General to have Dr. Chen operate on me. I'm sure you're angry that I refused. I need you to understand something. I didn't refuse because I'm ungrateful or difficult. I refused because I don't trust Dr. Chen. And after what I'm about to tell you, I hope you'll understand why. If you're reading this, it means I survived. It means Dr. Torres successfully removed my appendix before it killed me. It means I'm alive to fight for myself. And I will fight. For the truth, for justice, for the life your son tried to take from me. We'll talk soon. Melissa." I sealed the letter in an envelope and put it in my bag. I didn't plan to send it, not yet, but I wanted it ready. The third letter was to Richard. This one was simple. I know everything. I left it sealed in an envelope on the kitchen counter. At 2 p.m., right on schedule, the pain started. It began as a dull ache in my lower right abdomen, just like I remembered. Within 30 minutes, it had intensified to a sharp, stabbing pain. By 3 p.m., I was doubled over, struggling to breathe. I called Dr. Torres' service. "This is Melissa Thornton," I gasped. "Patient of Dr. Torres, I have severe abdominal pain, right lower quadrant. I think it's my appendix." The service operator was calm and efficient. "We're sending you directly to St. Catherine's Emergency Department. Dr. Torres is being notified. Can you drive yourself or do you need an ambulance?" I can drive. I could barely walk, but I'd be damned if I was going to let an ambulance take me to Mercy General. The drive to St. Catherine's was 20 minutes of pure agony. Every bump in the road sent shockwaves of pain through my abdomen. I gripped the steering wheel so hard my knuckles went white. But I made it. The ER staff at St. Catherine's was ready for me. They had a wheelchair waiting. A nurse took my vitals while another started an IV. "Dr. Torres is on his way," the nurse said. "We're going to get you into imaging right away." The CT scan confirmed what I already knew. Acute appendicitis, likely about to rupture. Dr. Torres appeared in my ER bay, already in scrubs. "Ms. Thornton, looks like your instincts were right. We need to operate immediately. Your appendix is inflamed and at high risk of rupture. I'm going to remove it laparoscopically if possible, but if it's already ruptured or if I see any complications, I may need to convert to an open procedure. Do you understand?" "Yes." "Do you have any questions?" "Will there be a surgical count for instruments and sponges?" He looked slightly surprised. "Yes, we do multiple counts throughout the procedure. It's standard protocol." "And you'll check before you close?" "I will personally verify the count and examine the surgical field." "I promise you, Ms. Thornton, nothing will be left inside you that shouldn't be there." I believed him. I had to. They wheeled me to the OR. The anesthesiologist was kind, explaining everything as she placed the IV. The last thing I remember was Dr. Torres's calm voice saying, "Count backward from 10, Melissa." I made it to 7 before the world went dark. I woke up in recovery. No sepsis, no infection, no surgical sponge left inside me to poison my blood. just a dull ache in my abdomen and 3 small incisions covered with clean bandages. Ms. Thornton, a recovery nurse, leaned over me. "Welcome back. Your surgery went perfectly. Dr. Torres removed your appendix laparoscopically. It hadn't ruptured yet, but it was close. You got here just in time." Just in time. Because I'd known. Because I'd been given a second chance. "Your husband is here," the nurse said. "He's been waiting. Should I send him in?" Richard, of course he was here. The hospital had probably called him as my emergency contact. "Not yet," I said, my voice hoarse. "I need a few minutes." The nurse nodded and left. I lay in the recovery bed taking inventory of my body. The pain was manageable, nothing like the agony of sepsis. I was on IV antibiotics as a precaution, but Dr. Torres had told me before the surgery that if he got my appendix out before it ruptured, my recovery should be straightforward. I was going to live. I was going to live, and I was going to destroy them all. The nurse returned with Dr. Torres. He smiled when he saw I was awake. "How are you feeling?" "Sore, but alive." "You should be. The surgery went exactly as planned. I removed your appendix before it ruptured. It was inflamed and at the point of bursting, but we got it in time. The tissue looked healthy otherwise. Clean removal, no complications. You should be able to go home tomorrow." "Thank you," I said, and meant it. "Thank you for listening to me, for taking my symptoms seriously." "That's my job." He paused. "Your husband is very anxious to see you. He's been asking every 10 minutes for updates." I bet he was. Wondering if I'd survived, calculating whether the insurance money was still coming. "Can you send him in?" Dr. Torres nodded and left. A moment later, Richard appeared. He looked terrible. His tie was loosened, his hair disheveled, his eyes red-rimmed. He crossed to my bedside and reached for my hand. I let him take it. "Melissa," he breathed. "Thank God. When the hospital called and said you were in surgery, I thought—" He broke off, his voice cracking. It was a good performance. If I hadn't died once already, watching him wait for it, I might have believed it. "I'm okay," I said. "Dr. Torres says the surgery went well." "Why didn't you call me?" he asked. "When the pain started, why didn't you call me first?" "You were at work. I didn't want to bother you." "Bother me?" His grip on my hand tightened. "Melissa, you had emergency surgery. You should have called me immediately." "I called my doctor. That seemed more important." He flinched. "I talked to Dr. Torres. He says you'll be fine, that you can come home tomorrow. I'll take the day off work. I'll take care of you." "That's not necessary." "Of course it is. You're my wife." "Your wife who you're cheating on? Your wife whose signature you forged? Your wife who you were ready to let die for insurance money?" "I'm tired, Richard. I need a rest." "Of course." He leaned down to kiss my forehead. "I'll be right outside if you need me. I'm not going anywhere." He left. I closed my eyes and let myself feel everything I'd been holding back. Relief, rage, grief for the woman I'd been, who'd loved him, who'd died trusting him. That woman was gone. I was someone new now, someone harder, someone who knew exactly how much Richard and his family were worth and how to take every penny of it. They moved me to a regular room that evening. Richard stayed until visiting hours ended, hovering, bringing me water I didn't want, adjusting my blankets, asking if I needed anything. It was exhausting. When he finally left, promising to return first thing in the morning, I waited 10 minutes and then called Sarah Chen, my private investigator. "Miss Thornton," she answered on the first ring. "How are you feeling?" "You heard about my surgery?" "I'm surveilling your husband, remember? I followed him to St. Catherine's. I'm guessing your appendix ruptured?" "Close enough, Sarah. I need you to accelerate your timeline. I need everything you can get in the next week. That's going to cost extra, and the results won't be as comprehensive. I don't care. Focus on the affair. I need photos, hotel receipts, Anything that proves he's sleeping with Amanda Pierce, and I need it fast. Any particular reason for the rush? Let's just say the timeline has moved up. Sarah was quiet for a moment. You're going to divorce him. Yes. While you're recovering from surgery? While I have leverage. Richard thinks I'm weak right now, vulnerable. He's going to use this. And when he does, I need to be ready to destroy him. I like you, Sarah said. Most of my clients spend weeks crying and second-guessing themselves. You know exactly what you want. I've had time to think about it. More than she knew. We agreed on the new timeline and the additional costs. After I hung up, I opened my laptop, which I'd had the foresight to include in my hospital bag, and started documenting everything. I wrote down everything I could remember about my first death. Dr. Chen's negligence, the retained sponge, the sepsis, the waiver, Richard and Patricia standing in my hospital room, waiting for me to die. I wrote it all down in excruciating detail and saved it to my encrypted cloud storage. Then I started researching medical malpractice law. By midnight, I had a plan. Dr. Torres discharged me the next morning with instructions for wound care and a prescription for pain medication. Richard drove me home, still playing the devoted husband. My mother wants to come over, he said as we pulled into our apartment complex. To help take care of you. No. The word came out sharper than I intended. He glanced at me, surprised. She's worried about you. She feels terrible that you were in pain, and I said, no, Richard, I don't want her here. She's my mother. She cares about you. I almost laughed. Your mother has never cared about me. She's worried I might have a valid reason for avoiding Dr. Chen. She wants to come over and make sure I'm not planning to cause problems for her friend. Richard's hands tightened on the steering wheel. That's not fair. Isn't it? Think about it, Richard. I told your mother I wanted to see a different doctor. She fought me on it. And then, miraculously, I end up needing emergency surgery. If I'd gone to Mercy General, if I'd let Dr. Chen operate on me, what do you think would have happened? What are you implying? I'm not implying anything. I'm stating facts. Dr. Chen has 3 formal complaints against her. 1 is still under investigation for operating while impaired. Richard nearly swerved off the road. How do you know that? Public records. Anyone can look them up. He pulled into our parking spot and killed the engine. When he turned to me, his expression was cold. You investigated my mother's friend? I investigated the surgeon who wanted to cut me open. That seems reasonable, doesn't it? You're being paranoid. Am I? Ask yourself, Richard. If I'd gone to Dr. Chen, if something had gone wrong during surgery, would your mother have helped me sue? Or would she have asked me to sign a waiver to protect her friend? He went very still. You're talking crazy. The pain medication must be affecting you. I'm not on pain medication yet. I'm completely clear-headed. And I'm telling you, your mother doesn't come to this apartment. Not today, not this week. Not until I'm ready. And when will that be? I'll let you know. We went inside in silence. Richard helped me to the couch, more out of obligation than care, I thought, and then retreated to his study without another word. I settled into the couch cushions and pulled out my phone. I had emails from Sarah. Attached were photos from the past 3 days of her surveillance. Richard and Amanda Pierce at a restaurant sitting too close. Richard and Amanda leaving his office together, her hand on his arm. Richard and Amanda entering a hotel at 7 p.m. on a Tuesday night, not emerging until 10 p.m. 3 hours. They'd been in a hotel room for 3 hours while I was having surgery. I zoomed in on the photo. Richard looked relaxed, happy, more alive than I'd seen him look in years. Amanda was beautiful, tall, blonde, polished, everything I wasn't. I should have felt jealous, hurt, betrayed. Instead, I felt vindicated. I downloaded the photos and added them to my growing file of evidence. Then I composed an email to an attorney. Jennifer Walsh was the best divorce lawyer in the state. She was also notoriously expensive and selective about her clients. But I'd done my research. Walsh took cases she could win, cases that would set precedents or make statements. She didn't care about the money. She came from family money herself. She cared about crushing bad actors. Richard Thornton, with his forged signatures and hidden money, was exactly the kind of bad actor Walsh liked to crush. Dear Ms. Walsh, my name is Melissa Thornton. I am writing to request a consultation regarding divorce from my husband, Richard Thornton, Senior Associate at Thornton & Associates. I have evidence of the following: ongoing affair with a colleague, forged signature on a post-nuptial agreement, financial fraud and concealment of marital assets, attempted exploitation during medical crisis. I am prepared to fight for a full accounting of marital assets and the invalidation of the fraudulent post-nuptial agreement. I have documentation of everything. I understand you are selective about your cases. I believe mine will be worth your time. Respectfully, Melissa Thornton. I attached a sample of my documentation, the forged signature analysis, the account statements, and one photo of Richard and Amanda at the hotel. Then I hit send. 3 days later, Jennifer Walsh called me personally. Ms. Thornton, she said, her voice crisp and professional. I've reviewed your email and your documentation. I have questions. I'm happy to answer them. The forged signature on the post-nuptial agreement. Have you had it analyzed by an expert? Not yet, but I can tell it's forged. Look at the pen pressure, the loop on the M. I'm looking at it. You're right, it does look suspicious. But we'll need an expert to testify to that. I have someone I use. I'll send you her information. Okay. The affair. Your PI has given you good material, but we need more. I want a paper trail, emails, texts, financial records showing hotel charges or gifts. Can you get access to his phone or computer? His computer is password protected, but I can try. Try hard. If he's been sloppy, there will be evidence. Men who cheat are almost always sloppy. Understood. The financial fraud is the most serious. If we can prove he's been hiding assets with the intent to defraud you in a divorce, we can go after everything. The prenup becomes irrelevant because he violated the duty of good faith. But again, we need ironclad proof. I have photos of statements showing over $2 million in assets I never knew about. That's a good start, but I need originals. Can you get them? I thought about the locked drawer in Richard's study. Yes. Good. Now here's what I need you to understand, Ms. Thornton. If we do this, we do it right. That means building an airtight case before we file anything. It means gathering every piece of evidence we can. It means preparing for Richard and his family to come after you with everything they have. The Thorntons are connected. They'll fight dirty. Are you prepared for that? Yes. Are you sure? Because once we start this, there's no going back. You'll be painted as a gold digger, a liar, possibly unstable. They'll try to destroy your reputation, your career, everything. I thought about dying alone in a hospital room, about the waiver they'd made me sign, about Richard's cold calculation. Let them try, I said. I have nothing left to lose. There was a pause, then a low chuckle. I like you, Ms. Thornton. You're going to be a very good client. Let's destroy these people. We scheduled an in-person meeting for the following week after I'd recovered enough from surgery to travel to her office. In the meantime, Walsh gave me a detailed list of everything she needed. I got to work. Richard's computer was the first challenge. He kept it in his study, password protected, and he never left it unlocked, but he was also a creature of habit. I watched him for 3 days, timing his routines. He worked from home 2 days a week, using his study from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. He took lunch at his desk, barely leaving except to use the bathroom, but at 3 p.m. every day, he made coffee. It took him exactly 4 minutes, 2 minutes to brew, 2 minutes to add cream and sugar and return to his study. 4 minutes. It would have to be enough. On the 4th day, I waited until 2:55 p.m. I'd positioned myself in the living room with my laptop, visible from the study, looking like I was working on something innocent. When Richard emerged for his coffee ritual, I slipped into the study. His computer was unlocked, email open. I didn't have time to read. I pulled out a thumb drive, one I'd bought with cash at an electronics store across town, and plugged it in. I'd already prepared a script that would copy his email folders, his documents folder, and his downloads. It would take 90 seconds while I stood by the door, listening for Richard's footsteps. The coffee maker beeped. 60 seconds left. I heard him moving in the kitchen, opening the fridge, the sound of cream being poured. 45 seconds. Come on. 30 seconds. The spoon clinking against the mug. He was stirring. 15 seconds. Footsteps. Coming back. The progress bar hit 100%. I yanked the thumb drive out and shoved it in my pocket. I was back in my seat in the living room, laptop open, looking absorbed in my screen, when Richard walked past carrying his coffee. He didn't even glance at me. That night, while Richard slept, I went through the files. There were hundreds of emails between Richard and Amanda. The affair had started over a year ago, long before my death in the original timeline, long before the life insurance policy increase. "Can't stop thinking about you," Richard had written. "Last night was incredible." "When are you leaving her?" Amanda had replied. "I'm tired of waiting." "Soon. I need to get everything in order first. The prenup makes it complicated." "Your mother said she could help with that." My breath caught. Patricia knew. Of course she knew. She'd probably encouraged it. Amanda Pierce was exactly the kind of daughter-in-law Patricia wanted. Pedigreed, connected, ambitious. I kept reading. "The postnup is done," Richard wrote in an email from 8 months ago. "My guy forged her signature. She'll never know until it's too late." "Won't she contest it?" "On what grounds? She signed it. At least that's what the paperwork will show." There it was. Admission of forgery, conspiracy to defraud, in writing. I copied the email chain and added it to my file. But there was more. 3 months ago, Richard had emailed Patricia. "M is getting difficult, asking questions about money. I might need to accelerate the timeline." Patricia's response, "Handle it, we can't have her making waves. The family reputation is at stake." What if she won't sign a divorce agreement? Then we find another solution. Vanessa owes me a favor. And there's always the life insurance. I read it 3 times, my hands shaking. They'd planned it. Not just the affair, not just the financial fraud. They'd planned to kill me. If my appendix hadn't conveniently ruptured, they would have found another way. An accident. A medical complication. Something. I was never going to survive this marriage. Not in the original timeline, not in any timeline. The only reason I was alive now was because I'd known what was coming. I saved everything. Every email, every document, every piece of evidence of their conspiracy. Then I called Jennifer Walsh. It was 2 a.m., but she answered on the 3rd ring. "This better be good, Ms. Thornton. I have emails proving my husband and his mother conspired to defraud me, including explicit admission of forging my signature on the post-nuptial agreement. Send them to me now." I forwarded everything while we stayed on the phone. I heard the ping of emails arriving on her end, then silence as she read. "Jesus Christ," she finally said. "They actually wrote this down?" Apparently they didn't think I was smart enough to find it. Their mistake. "Ms. Thornton, what I'm reading here goes beyond divorce fraud. This is conspiracy. This is criminal. That line about another solution and the life insurance, that's conspiracy to commit murder." "I know. You need to go to the police." "Not yet." "Melissa." "Not yet," I repeated. "If I go to the police now, Richard's family will bury it. They have connections, lawyers, money. It'll disappear. But if I wait until the divorce is filed, until everything is public record, it's harder to make disappear." Walsh was quiet for a long moment. "You're right, and you're thinking like a strategist. Okay, we build the case, we file for divorce, we get the settlement, then we decide about criminal charges." "Agreed. In the meantime, I want you to be careful. If your husband and his mother were discussing murder, you're not safe in that house." "I know, but if I leave now, I look like I'm abandoning the marriage. It weakens my case." "Better a weak case than a dead client." I'll be careful, I promise. We hung up. I sat in the dark, my laptop screen casting shadows, and thought about Patricia's email. There's always the life insurance. They'd wanted me dead. They still wanted me dead in this timeline. The only difference was that I wasn't cooperating. The next morning, I transferred $50,000 from our joint account into my private account. It was half of what was there. Legally, it was mine. Practically, it was going to start a war. Richard noticed by lunchtime. Did you take money from our account? He stood in the living room doorway, phone in hand, his face red. Yes, $50,000. Why? Because it's my money, too. Half of that account is mine. You can't just, we use that for bills, for expenses. There's still $50,000 left. That's more than enough for bills. What do you need $50,000 for? That's my business. He crossed the room in 3 strides. Tell me where the money went. No. Melissa, I'm not playing games. That's our money. You can't just be... Actually, Richard, I can. It's a joint account. I'm entitled to half. I took half. You took it without discussing it with me. Like you discussed the post-nuptial agreement with me? Oh, wait, you didn't discuss it at all. You just forged my signature. The color drained from his face. What are you talking about? I found the post-nup. The one where you modified our prenup to screw me over in a divorce. The one with my forged signature. You're confused. You signed that document. We talked about it. Really? When? Last year, with the estate attorney. What estate attorney? What's his name? Richard's mouth opened, then closed. He was scrambling, trying to remember his own lie. I don't remember his name, he said finally. It was a referral from my mother. Of course it was. Richard, I never signed that document. And when my attorney has a handwriting expert examine it, they're going to confirm it. Your attorney? His voice was very quiet now. Dangerous. Yes, my attorney. I'm filing for divorce. For a moment, neither of us moved. Richard stared at me like he'd never seen me before. You can't be serious. I've never been more serious about anything in my life. Melissa, listen to yourself. You just had surgery. You're on pain medication. You're not thinking clearly. I'm not on pain medication. I'm thinking perfectly clearly, and I'm done with this marriage. Is this because I've been working late? Because I know I've been busy, but it's because you've been fucking Amanda Pierce for over a year. Dead silence. It's because you forged my signature on a legal document to steal my rights to marital property. It's because you and your mother conspired to defraud me. And it's because I read the emails, Richard. The ones where Patricia suggested another solution if I wouldn't cooperate. The ones about the life insurance. All the blood had drained from his face now. He looked like he might collapse. You went through my computer. Yes. That's illegal. Violation of privacy. Actually, it's not. You're my husband. We live in the same house. There's no expectation of privacy, and even if there was, I don't care. I have everything, every email, every document, every piece of evidence of your fraud. You're bluffing. I pulled out my phone and read from the screen. The post-nup is done. My guy forged her signature. She'll never know until it's too late. I looked up at him. Want me to keep going? I have dozens more, including the ones where you and your mother discussed killing me for the insurance money. That's not... You're taking it out of context. Then explain the context to me, Richard. Explain how there's always the life insurance in response to what to do if I won't sign divorce papers has any context that doesn't involve murdering me. He couldn't. He opened his mouth several times, but no. Words came out. You have 2 choices, I said. You can make this easy or you can make this hard. Easy means you agree to a fair settlement. 50% of all marital assets, including the accounts you've been hiding. Hard means I release these emails to the police and you get investigated for conspiracy to commit fraud and possibly conspiracy to commit murder. You wouldn't. Try me. We stared at each other across the living room. Two people who'd promised to love each other forever, now enemies. I need to call my mother, he said finally. I'm sure you do. He left. I heard him in his study, his voice rising and falling. He was on the phone for over an hour. When he emerged, his face was set. My mother wants to talk to you. I'm sure she does. The answer is no. Melissa, no, I'm not talking to Patricia. I'm not negotiating with her. This is between you and me and our lawyers. She can help us work this out. Mediate. Mediate? I actually laughed. Richard, your mother is part of the problem. She knew about the affair. She knew about the forged documents. She suggested killing me. Why the hell would I let her mediate anything? You're being unreasonable. And you're being delusional. Pack a bag. I want you out of this apartment by tonight. This is my apartment. It's our apartment. We're both on the lease. And I'm not leaving, so you are. I'm not going anywhere. Fine, then I'm calling the police and filing a report about the threats in your emails. We'll see how that goes. He knew I meant it. I could see the calculation in his eyes. The same cold calculation I'd seen in the hospital room in my other life. He was weighing his options, trying to figure out how to minimize the damage. I'll stay at my mother's, he said finally. But this isn't over, Melissa. You're making a huge mistake. The only mistake I made was marrying you. He packed a bag while I watched from the couch. He threw clothes and toiletries into a duffel, moving with jerky, angry motions. When he was done, he stopped in the doorway. I loved you, he said. No, you didn't. You loved what I represented. A nice, quiet, grateful wife who wouldn't ask questions or cause problems. But I'm not that person anymore. What happened to you? He asked. And for a moment, he sounded genuinely confused. You used to be so sweet, so trusting. I died, I said. And I came back. He stared at me for a long moment, then shook his head and left. I waited until I heard his car pull away. Then I locked the door, poured myself a glass of wine, and called Jennifer Walsh. It's done, I told her. He's gone. And he knows I have everything. Good. That means he's going to panic. Panicking people make mistakes. Let him make his mistakes, and we'll be ready. The next 3 weeks were a blur of preparation. Sarah finished her surveillance and presented me with a comprehensive report on Richard's affair. Photos, hotel receipts, credit card, statements showing jewelry purchases for Amanda, restaurant reservations, everything I needed. Jennifer Walsh filed for divorce on grounds of adultery and fraud. The filing made local news, Thornton family heir in messy divorce. Patricia must have been furious. Richard's lawyers responded with a motion to dismiss based on the post-nuptial agreement. Jennifer filed a counter-motion with the handwriting expert's analysis proving the signature was forged. That made bigger news. Forgery alleged in Thornton divorce case. Patricia tried to call me 15 times. I didn't answer. She tried to come to the apartment. I didn't let her in. She sent her lawyer with a settlement offer, $100,000 and a confidentiality agreement. I countered with $2 million, half of all marital assets, and no confidentiality agreement. They refused. Fine, we'd go to court, but I had one more move to make. I called Dr. Torres. Dr. Torres, this is Melissa Thornton. I wanted to follow up on something. When you operated on me, did you take any photos of my appendix? Yes. We always photograph surgical findings. Why? Could I get copies of those photos? And the surgical report? Of course. Can I ask what this is for? I'm considering a medical malpractice claim against another doctor. There was a pause. The doctor you originally didn't want to see? Yes. I see. Ms. Thornton, I want you to know that what I saw during your surgery was completely consistent with acute appendicitis. You made the right call getting to the hospital when you did. Another hour or two and it would have ruptured. But it didn't rupture during surgery? No, I removed it intact. Clean procedure, no complications. And if it had ruptured? Or if someone had made a mistake during the surgery? If it had ruptured before surgery, you would have developed peritonitis. Very serious, potentially fatal without aggressive treatment. If someone had made a mistake during surgery, he paused. What kind of mistake are we talking about? A retained surgical sponge. I heard his sharp intake of breath. That would be catastrophic. Guaranteed infection, likely sepsis. Depending on how long it went undetected, it could absolutely be fatal. That's what I thought. Thank you, Dr. Torres. I hung up and pulled out my laptop. Time for the final piece of my plan. I wrote a detailed account of what had happened in my first life. Dr. Chen's negligence. The retained sponge. The sepsis. The waiver Patricia and Richard had forced me to sign. My death. Then I described my rebirth. My decision to choose a different surgeon. My successful surgery with Dr. Torres. Finally, I explained what I'd discovered. The affair, the forged documents, the conspiracy. The emails about another solution, and the life insurance. I ended with this. I am alive today because I trusted my instincts and chose my own doctor. If I had gone to Mercy General, if I had let Dr. Vanessa Chen operate on me, believe I would be dead. Not because of my appendix, but because my husband and his mother needed me to be dead. I am filing this statement with my attorney, with the medical board, and with the police. Dr. Vanessa Chen has a pattern of complications and complaints. She should not be allowed to operate on anyone else. And Richard Thornton and Patricia Thornton should be investigated for conspiracy to commit fraud and possibly conspiracy to commit murder. I saved it, sent a copy to Jennifer Walsh, and then I sent it to the medical board. Within 24 hours, the medical board opened an investigation into Dr. Chen. Within 48 hours, they suspended her license pending the investigation. Patricia called me 23 times that day. I didn't answer. Instead, I drafted one more document, a statement for the police detailing everything I'd found, the emails, the forgery, the threats. Jennifer advised me to wait. Once you file this, it's out of your hands. The police will investigate, maybe bring charges. It could take years. And it might not go anywhere. I know, but I have to try. Why? You're going to win the divorce. You're going to get your money. Why risk it? Because they tried to kill me. Because they would have succeeded if I hadn't known what was coming. And because there are probably other women they've done this to or would do this to, I can't let them get away with it. Jennifer was quiet for a moment. You're a better person than most of my clients. I don't know about that. I just know what it feels like to die alone, knowing the people who should love you are counting down the minutes until your insurance pays out. Okay, file the police report, but be prepared for backlash. The Thorntons will fight this with everything they have. Let them. I filed the report the next day. The backlash was immediate and brutal. The Thorntons hired a PR firm. Within a week, I was being painted in the media as a vindictive, unstable woman trying to destroy a prominent family. Articles appeared questioning my mental health, my motives, my credibility. Nurse claims husband tried to kill her. Experts skeptical. Thornton family lawyer. This is a clear case of a gold digger scorned. Friends say Melissa Thornton changed after surgery. Was it the medication? They found my nursing supervisor and convinced her to give an interview saying I'd called in sick before my surgery, implying I'd faked my symptoms. They found Richard's colleagues who testified that he was a devoted husband who talked about me constantly. Amanda Pierce gave a tearful interview saying Richard had confided in her about his troubled marriage, that I'd been emotionally distant and cold. It was masterful, brutal, effective. My own lawyer started getting nervous. Melissa, the court of public opinion is turning against you. We need to do something. Like what? Give an interview. Tell your side. Humanize yourself. I thought about it. The old Melissa would have hidden, would have been intimidated by the onslaught. The new Melissa had died once already. She had nothing left to fear. Set it up, I said. Jennifer arranged for an interview with a local investigative journalist named Rebecca Chen. Still no relation to Vanessa, I hoped. Rebecca had a reputation for taking on powerful people and institutions. We met at a coffee shop. Rebecca was in her 40s, sharp-eyed, with a recorder on the table between us. "Tell me everything," she said. So I did. I told her about my marriage, about Richard's coldness, Patricia's control, about the appendicitis, the choice of surgeons, the successful surgery with Dr. Torres. Then I told her what I'd found. The affair, the forged documents, the emails. You're saying your husband and his mother conspired to kill you for insurance money? I'm saying they discussed it as an option if I wouldn't cooperate with a divorce. And I'm saying that if I had gone to Dr. Chen, if something had gone wrong during surgery, which very well might have, given her history, they would have made me sign a waiver and then let me die. That's a serious accusation. I have emails to back it up. I showed her. She read them carefully, her expression growing darker. This is... Jesus. Can I quote from these? Everything I've shown you is part of the public court record now. You can use whatever you want. The article ran 3 days later, front page of the city's major newspaper. The woman who came back, Melissa Thornton's fight against a family that wanted her dead. It was devastating. Rebecca had done her homework, pulling together not just my story, but Dr. Chen's history of complaints, the Thornton family's pattern of using their wealth and connections to make problems disappear, Richard's affair with detailed receipts and photos. The public opinion shifted overnight. Suddenly, I wasn't the crazy, vindictive ex-wife. I was the survivor, the underdog fighting a powerful family. Support poured in. Other women came forward with stories of being mistreated by Thornton men. 2 more former patients of Dr. Chen filed complaints with the medical board. The police investigation, which had been moving at a crawl, suddenly accelerated. Detectives wanted to interview me to see all my evidence, and Richard's lawyers called Jennifer with a new settlement offer, $1.8 million, invalidation of the post-nuptial agreement, full division of marital assets, and an agreement that Richard would cooperate with any criminal investigation. "It's a good offer," Jennifer said, "by better than we'd get in court, probably." "What about the confidentiality agreement?" They dropped it. They know they can't make you be quiet, not with everything that's already public. I thought about it. $1.8 million. Financial security, freedom. But more than that, Richard admitting, legally, that he'd defrauded me, agreeing to cooperate with the criminal investigation. "Take it," said. We settled. 6 months later, I stood in the lobby of St. Catherine's Hospital waiting for Dr. Torres. The medical board had revoked Dr. Chen's license. The investigation had found a pattern of impairment and negligence going back years. She'd been operating while under the influence more times than anyone could count. It was a miracle she hadn't killed someone before. Or maybe she had, and those families had been pressured to sign waivers. Richard and Patricia were under investigation for conspiracy to commit fraud. The DA thought he could make the charges stick, but it would take time. Richard had lost his job at the law firm. Turns out forgery was frowned upon in the legal profession. Patricia had resigned from the hospital board. Amanda Pierce had quietly ended her relationship with Richard once his money problems became public. Funny how that worked. As for me, I was done with nursing, at least for now. The divorce settlement had given me breathing room to figure out what I wanted. I'd started a blog about my experience, helping other women recognize signs of financial abuse and control in their marriages. It had taken off faster than I'd expected. Dr. Torres appeared in the lobby, smiling when he saw me. Ms. Thornton, or should I say Ms. Chen now? I'd reclaimed my maiden name. Melissa is fine. What can I do for you? I wanted to thank you, properly, for listening to me, for taking my concerns seriously, for saving my life. That's my job. It's more than that. You treated me like my choices mattered, like my instincts were worth trusting. Not every doctor does that. He nodded slowly. I've read the articles about what happened, what you discovered. I'm glad you're safe. I'm more than safe. I'm free. We talked for a few more minutes and then I left. As I walked to my car, my phone buzzed. A news alert. Local hospital reaches $3.2 million settlement in medical malpractice case. I clicked the link. It wasn't my case, I'd never sued, but another woman, emboldened by my story, had come forward about her own botched surgery by Dr. Chen. The hospital, desperate to avoid more publicity, had settled fast. I smiled. Good for her. My phone buzzed again. This time, a text from an unknown number. This isn't over. You destroyed my family. You'll pay for this. Patricia. She'd finally broken her silence. I stared at the text for a moment, then blocked the number. She was wrong. It was over. She'd lost her son's wife, her standing in the community, her control over everyone around her. She'd probably lost her friendship with Vanessa Chen too. And I'd won. Not just money, though the money helped. I'd won my life back, my freedom, my power. I'd died once, helpless and alone, betrayed by everyone who should have protected me. I'd come back to burn their world down, and now, standing in the sunshine, whole and healthy and free, I knew it had been worth it. They'd made me sign a waiver for her medical malpractice. But I'd been given a second chance. And this time, I made them pay for everything. Epilogue. 2 years later, I sat in a conference room with 5 other women. We'd all survived medical malpractice, financial abuse, or both. We'd all fought back. Thank you for coming, I said. I know some of you traveled pretty far. Worth it, said Maria, a woman who'd sued her doctor for a botched C-section that had left her unable to have more children. She'd won $4 million. When I saw your blog post about starting this foundation, I knew I had to be part of it. The Melissa Chen Foundation for Patient Advocacy and Women's Financial Rights. We helped women navigate medical crises, connected them with good lawyers, provided financial assistance for expert witnesses and investigations. We'd helped 30 women in our first year, 50 more in the second. Some of them won millions, some won hundreds of thousands. All of them won their freedom. I got an email yesterday, I said, from a woman whose husband forged her signature on a post-nup just like mine did. She found out when she tried to leave him and his lawyer presented her with the document. She was devastated. What did you tell her? Asked Simone, another board member. I told her to get a handwriting expert, that forgery is usually provable. I connected her with Jennifer Walsh, and I told her the same thing I tell everyone. You are not powerless. You are not trapped. You can fight back. Did she believe you? She does now. Jennifer called this morning. The handwriting expert confirmed it was forged. The husband is panicking. He's already offered a full settlement. We all smiled. These small victories never got old. Any other news? Asked Rachel, our treasurer. Yes, remember the bill we were supporting? The one requiring hospitals to report retained surgical items to a national database? They all leaned forward. It passed. The governor signed it this morning. The room erupted in cheers. It had taken 2 years of lobbying, countless meetings, testimony from victims. But we'd done it. Now, when a surgeon left a sponge or an instrument inside a patient, it would be reported. Tracked. Patterns would become visible. Negligent doctors would be caught faster. We couldn't save everyone, but we could save some. And that had to be enough. After the meeting, I drove home to my apartment, a different one in a better part of town, that I'd bought with my settlement money. No Richard, no Patricia. No one telling me what to do or who to trust. Just me and the life I'd built from the ashes of my death. I poured a glass of wine and opened my laptop. My blog had a new comment. I just found your site. My husband has been hiding money from me. I'm scared to confront him. I don't know what to do. I took a sip of wine and started typing. I know it's scary. I know it feels impossible, but you can do this. Start by documenting everything. Somewhere out there, another woman was reading my words, learning that she didn't have to accept the abuse, that she could fight back, that she could win. I'd died once, powerless and alone. I'd come back to make sure no other woman had to. And I'd spend the rest of my life making sure they knew they were not alone. They were not powerless. They could survive this. They could win. And if they needed help burning it all down, I had matches.